Okay, let's continue to look at how we can work together and operate the mechanisms, if you like, of the sexual act. And Miles says that there are two major problems that tend to block good sexual adjustment in marriage. And to make it easier to remember these two problems, he's called them time and space, and he discusses them in that order. So firstly, let's discuss the time problem. And remember, God created us differently from each other in pretty much every way. And in his plan for most things to work, we have to be prepared to give of ourselves. And in the sexual act, it's no different. We find that the first thing that we must deal with is the matter of timing. Now, men and women have different timing in arousal. A man can become excited very quickly, in part because he's visually and mentally stimulated. Remember, we said he has a lot of testosterone, so he tends to think a bit more about sex. And of course, his first port of call is also the visual side of sexuality. Whereas a woman typically takes longer, and being emotionally based, she's responsive in part in the first instance to romance and touch. So the man must learn patience if he cares for the pleasure of his wife. Both man and woman have been given the ability to experience pleasure through orgasm, but another problem arises as well. Another problem emerges. So a man can be ready for orgasm in a comparatively short amount of time, whereas his wife may need a considerable amount of stimulation to arouse her before she comes to that place. And Miles puts it this way. He's saying by time, we refer to the fact that sexually male and female bodies are timed differently. Sexually, man is timed quickly, and he can become aroused through sexual stimulation with his wife and usually reach orgasm in a very short time, 2 minutes, 1 minute, or in even less time, and this is normal for him. But he'll gradually learn to control himself, but he'll always tend to be quick on the trigger. And the wife should realise that all other women's husbands are quick on the trigger as well. Now remember that success for a man sexually is very important for his self-esteem. So the wife then's more likely to get the results that she wants by encouraging him so that he can grow confident and achieve self-control, rather than deriding him or putting him down if he lacks endurance, which will add to his anxiety and make the problem worse. Now, on the other hand, sexually, a woman is timed more slowly, sometimes very slowly, particularly as compared with a man. So Miles says that we can safely say that it takes the average woman 10 to 15 minutes or longer from the time that she starts sexual arousal with her husband until she experiences orgasm. So we make a note of this. This time would normally include the beginnings of sexual activity such as kissing and fondling, preparing for and prior to the stimulation of her more sensitive sexual parts. So Miles says sometimes she may have an orgasm in 10 minutes, 5 minutes, or even less. A few women on special occasions have an orgasm in 1 or 2 minutes, but this is the exception. And so we'll make a note here that other studies have borne this out, that and indicated typically 7 minutes of direct stimulation on average. But there can be other factors involved that we need to think about, such as tiredness, stress, age, or even anxiety from previous experiences. Okay, so many other circumstances such as what's happening in her personal life might affect her, or where she is in her monthly cycle may play a role in this as well, certainly more so than for her husband. Now, he should realise that this longer period of time is the case for all men's wives, and that she is created this way. She takes longer. And when we think about it, perhaps in God's economy for sexuality to work, the man must be patient and loving, laying down his own life, so to speak, caring more about her needs than his own wants. In fact, in my personal opinion, the man's attitude to sex should be all about her pleasure and not his own, which is pretty much the opposite to what we see in the world. In biblical sense, it truly is better to give than receive. Now, the man who approaches sexuality in this manner will find it far more fulfilling, and I think sowing and reaping certainly applies here. Now, the wife, for her part, has to be willing to be willing. In other words, involved in the process, realizing that she's not initially excited, but giving herself to him even when, to start off with, she isn't aroused, whereas knowing that he is excited immediately. But it's even good for both of you to understand that, both partners in the couple. All right, now when a young couple understands the difference in their sexual timing and when they accept it and cooperate with it, it's no longer a major problem, but it actually may be a blessing. And Miles says by being a blessing, what he means is that this period of sexual stimulation and arousal, whether it be 10 or 20 minutes, may become one of the sweetest, most meaningful and spiritual experiences in the husband-wife relationship. And remember, this intimacy is specific to marriage. It's not something that you're meant to be doing commonly. Okay, the next thing that Miles continues in his explanation is what he calls the space problem. And he says that the second major problem that tends to block good sexual adjustment, he calls space. Okay, and space refers to the distance on the body of the wife between the clitoris and the vaginal passage. And the clitoris, as we said before, is the external arousal trigger that sets off orgasm in the woman. Now, it's made up of many nerve endings designed by the Creator to arouse a woman to have orgasm, as we also already mentioned. Now, we noted that the clitoris is about 30 millimetre or 1¼ inches above the vagina, out in front to some degree at the upper meeting point of the inner lips. So it's been described by some people as a mini penis having a shaft and being very, very sensitive. So Miles continues to explain that when the space is visualized and understood, it should become clear that in normal intercourse, the penis does not touch or contact the clitoris. Now, this fact is of major importance, since the penis doesn't move back and forth over the clitoris in intercourse. The wife may not have become fully aroused, and thus she will not have an orgasm. So it's been suggested that any positions which may allow the penis to contact the clitoris may not be very comfortable for either the wife or the husband. So coupled with this, most husbands cannot control themselves for 10 or 15 minutes so that the wife has sufficient stimulation to have an orgasm. So we have a problem. So since the clitoris is the arousal trigger of the wife, and since the penis doesn't contact the clitoris in normal intercourse, marriage counsellors, including Christian marriage counsellors, recommend what is called direct stimulation. Now that is direct stimulation. The husband, in the process of love play, before actual intercourse starts, will gently stimulate all the erotic zones of his wife's body. Now this includes obviously things like kissing her lips and breasts and using his hands and fingers to explore her total body, including the inner thighs, her outer lips, the opening of her vagina, and then finally her clitoris, although as we noted before, that may not be comfortable for her for that direct contact, but perhaps near contact. Now, if you haven't been exposed to these concepts on good sexual mechanics before, you might actually be struggling in the directness of the quotations of these people. However, if you read the book of Song of Songs from the Bible, you'll find that it's both blatantly descriptive of erotic activity and poetic and sensual in its illustration of sexual anatomy. It alludes to the activities that are actually being described here, but in a beautiful and tasteful way. All right, Miles continues. So the man will continue the stimulation of the clitoris for 10 or 15 minutes or whatever time it takes until he's sure that she's fully aroused sexually and then ready for intercourse. And obviously each woman knows what she prefers in this preparation phase, and this may vary from one encounter to another encounter. Some women don't want continuous manual stimulation of the clitoris without other touching and caressing taking place. And really a sexual meeting can take place beginning with the man giving the wife a back massage, which shows affection, it relaxes her, it is actually sexual for her, and this gives the man's arousal time a chance to settle down before intercourse takes place. All right, Miles goes on to say, the important thing to remember here is that the clitoris is the external arousal trigger, and there must be stimulation of the clitoris and or the area near the clitoris for a wife to have an orgasm. So the method of the stimulation, he says, of the clitoris is not so important. All right, on a practical note, there's generally some kind of lubrication required for the stimulation of the wife, otherwise it won't be comfortable. And this would normally come naturally in the process of touching the moisture around the vaginal area. Now, many women don't like fingers being inserted into the vagina, if at all. At times, some other kind of lubricant might be necessary, and this may well be the case for example with postmenopausal women who no longer self-lubricate as they did when they were younger. So to summarise here, after suitable sexual arousal of both man and wife, which will invariably include direct stimulation for her, then the penis is inserted, and one following the other in movement, they move together towards orgasm with the penis inside the vagina. So then we have to ask the question, but what if this isn't sufficient for both to achieve orgasm and satisfaction? Well, let me preface answering this by citing the results of question 54 in the book, Sexual Happiness in Marriage by Dr. Miles. And the question was, when the wife is aroused near an orgasm, can she reach the orgasm after intromission, which means after the penis is inserted into the vagina during the process of intercourse without further direct stimulation of the clitoris? Now, this question was asked to women as a survey, and 58.7% of them said yes, and 41.3% of them said no. So the evidence we have there is a significant number of women cannot reach orgasm without continued direct stimulation. Now, I've read other more recent statistics stating that this is the case with well over 60% of women, so it can be a problem. So how is this lovingly negotiated, caring for the needs of the wife? And Miles says one way is as follows. After the arousal period and immediately after intercourse is started, the husband may place the weight of his body on his left arm, put his right hand down on his wife's clitoris, and give her further stimulation while intercourse continues. But he says that this is somewhat awkward. So secondly, he says, but if the wife can have orgasms by direct stimulation but cannot get to an orgasm during intercourse, it's wise for the wife to have further direct stimulation of the clitoris while in the process of the intercourse. So after the arousal period, as the husband begins the intercourse, the wife may put her finger on her own clitoris, which is more comfortable for both, and continue giving herself the same direct stimulation while they're working together that her husband's been giving her in the preparation period. Now, of the two methods, it's considered that this second one is the most comfortable and the most efficient, remembering that the goal is to work as a team, caring about and meeting each other's needs. Now, the Penners say this pairing of clitoral manipulation with intercourse has been found to be quite effective for many couples. At times, as the wife nears orgasm but is taking time to climax, the man may be unable to control himself and hold on until she's climaxed, which is why this technique is used. So to remove pressure on each partner and diffuse any potential future anxiety, the husband can continue to directly stimulate his wife after his own orgasm until she is fulfilled. The main thing is that emotionally you're accepting of each other's needs, caring about giving the partner enjoyment and arrival at completion. So indeed, God's gift of sex is to be able to pleasure each other in this way and bless each other. So some meaningful time together, caressing, embracing, resting is a loving way to complete the encounter after you're both satisfied. Now, all of this requires good communication about what's liked or disliked to get it to work well. And this usually takes time and patience, but if you're dedicated to each other, you will get there. All right, now good sex then becomes a strength for your relationship, protecting you from the temptations of illicit sexual expression, which is something that's rampant in our modern times now. Okay, well that completes our examination of healthy sexuality and adjustment. Now when we return, we're going to look at ways that Satan distorts and perverts this gift of God in ungodly sexual acts or in ungodly ways. And so hopefully we'll see you when we return and continue with that.